is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And hey, at least El Senior returned back to the pitch. Am I right? But no, seriously, I think it's a very, very good thing that I did not record an episode directly right after the game on Sunday night, because there were a lot of people disappointed. And yeah, I was disappointed too. And probably wouldn't have said a lot of great things. Probably would have been just an angry episode if I would have recorded right after the game. Maybe some of you guys are still angry that we are now on to Monday. You guys are listening to this podcast, I'm sure, on Tuesday. But look, the game didn't go how any of us expected. You guys heard last episode. I said I was worried in the podcast. And did I expect a loss? No, not really. A draw was probably what I was feeling, but either way, I didn't feel good about the match at all. Shout out to friend of the podcast, Ed Fagan. Before the game started, he texted me and Ricky Zelfer, and he's like, yeah, I'm feeling a 1-1 result tonight, so well done, Ed. Got it spot on. So it's not something that any of us had hoped for. We all wanted 3 points against Inter Miami, but it wasn't meant to be. But unlike past weeks, don't have too much MLS news, but I would suspect come Sunday, next Monday, we'll probably have a ton of MLS news to talk about. So, look, let's not spend too long talking about MLS news, because there's a lot to talk about in this Inter Miami game. A lot of positivity I want to bring, and you guys might be saying, no, there is nothing to be positive about. Yeah, I'll try to spin what the whole vibe was on Twitter Sunday night and try to change some of your minds. Maybe I won't. But anyway, let's just go straight into the news. Yeah, so starting off, we're going to go ahead and focus on Atlanta United. But before I talk about the player that Atlanta United are about to sign, I talked about, when was it, 2 episodes ago, maybe 3 episodes ago, talking about Gabriel Heinze, the ex-Atlanta United manager. And so when I recorded that episode, I did not know, like, all these reports were coming out when I was recording the episode. And then it came out, apparently, like, he refused to give his players water breaks. I'm like, Jesus, like, I am, like, kind of defending this guy and everything, playing under Sir Alex Ferguson, probably taking some of his methods from Sir Alex. And then reports come out and say, yeah, he wasn't giving his players water breaks. His players are coming out anonymously saying, yeah, it was like hell for 6 months. I mean, Peter Novak or what? I mean, it hasn't been reported that he was spanking his players yet, but could he have? Potentially, but yeah, it's pretty brutal to not give your players water, to refuse giving them water. Yeah, it's look, for 6 months, it sounds like it was pretty terrible for those Atlanta United players, and for the fans, it was definitely terrible. But for some good news for Atlanta United fans, maybe this changes everything for Atlanta United. According to Cesar Luis Merlo, he is reporting that Atlanta United is close to acquiring 20-year-old Argentine winger Thiago Almada. Now, this is a guy who I didn't know too much about until I started looking up his name. Apparently, he's with Argentina in the Olympics right now. He plays for Argentine club Velez. And before Atlanta United came in and signed him, or about to sign him, I guess it depends when you guys are listening to this episode, it looked like he was going to go to French side Marseille, but then Marseille's president came out and said, yeah, we don't have enough money to afford Thiago Almada, and the deal never materialized. And like I was talking last episode with you guys, teams in South America, they're desperate for money, and this is apparently, look, we saw it with Pity Martinez and Barco, young, upcoming Argentine wingers, attacking midfielders, where, this is going to be the future of Argentina soccer. And so apparently that's what people are saying about Thiago. And he didn't get his move to Marseille. A team that has money is Atlanta United. So it's being reported that he has signed a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option. He's 20 years old, like I said. Will he stay all the time at Atlanta United? Probably not if he hits the ground running. But like we talked about again a couple episodes ago, what signings have impressed for Atlanta United? So I feel like this is the last big signing before Arthur Blank says, okay, yeah, I'm getting rid of my front office. If this guy doesn't materialize, if this guy isn't successful like everybody thinks he's going to be. We already went through Pity Martinez. We already went through Ezekiel Barkle. We need to hit something, is what Arthur Blank, I'm sure, is thinking. Is it going to be Thiago Almada? I don't know. But in 80 games played, he had 20 goals, 7 assists. And look, if Marseille's looking at this guy, if other teams in Europe were looking at this guy, obviously he has talent. Obviously, there's something special about him. But, like I said, teams in South America, desperate for money. And if teams in Europe who are hurting for money because of COVID, but not as bad as teams in South America, look, if they don't want to pony up the money what Velez wants, then Atlanta United come in, or they're like, okay, here's money, and we'll see if they finally found that missing piece, the piece that they haven't had since Miguel Almiron. I'm hoping that they haven't, because it is funny watching Atlanta United be a complete dumpster fire. And don't worry, there is something else I want to bring up about Atlanta United for Blunder of the Week, and maybe you guys are thinking now, wait, what's he talking about? But maybe some of you guys know, I know exactly what you're going to bring up. I mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'll tease that right there, because what a joke it was down for the Columbus Crew this weekend in Atlanta as they took on Atlanta United, which the Crew won 1-0. Look, I've teased it enough, and I'll save it for Blunder of the Week. And then point number 2 I want to bring up is Kacper Przyblko. He has earned a spot on the bench for MLS Team of the Week for Week 15 due to his goal that he scored against Atlanta United, as we know, tied the game up 1-1. And that's all that I wrote for the Union. And speaking of that, let's just go straight into the Inter Miami Philadelphia Union game. So I will say I understand many people's frustrations with how this team played against Inter Miami. Look, Inter Miami, they're the worst team in MLS. They lost 5-0 to New England. They lost 6 games in a row. They're a terrible team. And it looked like it was going to be an easy game for the Philadelphia Union on paper because of just how bad Inter Miami had been playing. Inter Miami have become this huge laughingstock. They only have 2 wins on the season. One of those wins are against the Philadelphia Union. And everybody was so disappointed with that game against Orlando City. And everybody's like, okay, we've got to get 3 points. We got to get 3 points. And obviously, it did not happen. But I said it on the last podcast that Miami, they would be motivated, that they would want nothing more than to beat the Philadelphia Union again this season. I thought it was always going to be a difficult task because, look, the Union were playing 2 games in 4 days down in the Florida heat. Many people aren't going to agree with me throughout this podcast, and that's okay. People might say that I'm just making excuses, but I'm trying to be realistic. I'm trying to be optimistic. I don't think the season's going as bad as people think, and I'll throw out some stats to you guys. Like I said in the intro, maybe that will change some of your minds. Maybe it won't. But just all the panicking, and I think part of it was it's the heat of the moment thing. So people get on their phones, they tweet exactly how they feel right there in that moment. Then a few hours pass and they don't feel that way anymore. So look, social media always has its good and its bad. And you wake up the next morning, you're like, yeah, why did I tweet that? Why did I say that? I don't feel that way anymore. It's just a heat of the moment thing. But, you know, maybe there are some of you guys listening to this podcast and you're still pretty pissed that the Union played poorly against Inter Miami. I'm not going to hide the fact that they played poorly against Inter Miami. Yes, on paper, the Union were the better team. But did they play like it? No, they did not play like it. But I don't think it's as bad as the comments I've been seeing on Twitter and everything. And like I said, I'll compare some stats and maybe I'll change your mind. But before I do that, I want to talk about two players on the night who were really, really poor leading up to that Inter Miami goal. That these two players are responsible for the reason why the goal was given up. And they are Olivier Mbaizo and Matt Freese. Look, before I dig into Mbaizo too much here, I do want to say he's tied for 5th in the league in progressive passes in the whole league. And for people that are listening, saying, what's a progressive pass? What in the world is that? I've never heard of that. And look, I'll be honest, I'd never heard of it either until I kept seeing more and more people on social media, national writers talking about this. I'm like, okay, this must be something pretty serious if they keep talking about progressive pass. So I looked it up, and apparently a progressive pass is completed passes in the opponent's penalty box. Like I said, Mbaizo is 5 on the list out of every single player in MLS. He has 92 passes in the penalty box. Number 1 on that list is obviously Carlos Gil. He's just blown away the competition this season in MLS with his offensive play. Not so much the goals, but definitely the assists, setting up his teammates. Carlos Gil, in my opinion right now, is the MLS MVP on the season. And if he continues to play the way that he's playing right now in MLS, then he'll win MVP. But, we're not here to talk about Carlos Gil. Mbaizo, 5th in the league in progressive passes with 92 passes into the box. We talked a little bit about Mbaizo last episode, where why does the Union's attack, it seems so much worse coming down the left than it has in the years past, where you go ahead and I gave like the crossing stats, the touches and everything for Mbaizo, and then you dive a little bit deeper into the progressive passes. Yeah, Mbaizo's having a really good year on the right side of the field for the Union. And by the way, if you guys want to go ahead and check out any of these stats, really, really, really awesome website. If you just go to fbref.com, it has so many different leagues. I wish it were a sponsor. If they were, it'd be awesome to get this awesome website to sponsor this podcast. Maybe one day. But fbref.com gives you all these crazy stats for MLS. So much stuff that I don't even understand yet. There's so much analytics now in sports, and I'm an analytic guy. You guys have heard me give up stats in the past, and I'm going to give stats again in this episode, but like reading progressive passing distance, reading goal creating actions. I've heard goal creating chances. Maybe that's what that is. It shows you goals created average 90 minutes. I don't know. I think that's what that stands for. I don't know. Just look at this website for yourself. It is an awesome website if you're into stats, and it's totally free. So there's a plug for a website that doesn't sponsor the podcast. Maybe one day they will. But just going back, look, Mbaizo offensively has been great for the Union this season. It's something we haven't had the last few years. Getting Ray Gaddis attacking on the right side of the field just seems like it was non-existent. Great defensively. Offensively, very, very, very limited. But it's been back-to-back games now from Mbaizo where his awareness has been lackluster at best. It's been extremely poor. And again, he got called into action against Inter Miami. Glesnes, he had to step to the ball when it was passed to Gonzalo Higuain. That's fine. I have nothing against Glesnes when he had to step to the ball. Right play there. And because of that, that just meant that Robinson was able to slide between Mbaizo and Elliott. Well, Mbaizo was too focused looking on the ball when it got past to Higuain. Didn't even pay attention to Robinson running in between him and Jack. And because of that, Robinson's in a one-on-one situation with Matt Freese. And Matt Freese really should have done better on this play. He gets a left hand to it, I believe it was, and the ball still goes in the back of the net. There's no reason Matt Freese should have been getting beat on. In my opinion, I thought it was a weak shot. Guy hit it right at Matt Freese, but goes in the back of the net. Matt Freese got to be stronger with that. And I thought about tweeting something about that play, but I was like, look, I still can't get on Matt Freese. I think Matt Freese is a very promising goalkeeper, but that play right there was just poor and kind of reminded me of Andre Blake in 2019, where he gave up some very poor goals. And Matt Freese has to be stronger than that. And is that his last action in MLS this season with Andre Blake coming back? Probably. Hopefully Andre Blake does not get hurt. Hopefully Andre Blake is good to go against the Chicago Fire. And, hopefully Matt Freese can just stay there and continue to learn from Andre Blake, continue to watch him, take notes, and in training just continue to get a better goalkeeper. I mean, it really hurts this season not to have a division for U2. And I know I've said that before, but for a guy like Matt Freese, a goalkeeper, it's got to be so tough where, look, scrimmages in practice don't relate at all to what happens in game moments when you're in stadiums full of people where all eyes are on you. And you can try to recreate that in practice all you want. You can have 1,000 shots on Matt Freese in practice and he can save all 1,000 of those, but it does not relate to game action at all. And so I do feel bad for just Matt Freese and just the homegrowns in general that need consistent playing time to get better. And maybe if Matt Freese would have had more consistent playing time, maybe he makes that save. I don't know. Look, he played good last season against New England, where we needed to beat New England to win the Supporters' Shield. Matt Freese was great that game, kept a clean sheet, made a couple big saves for the Union against the Revs. But on the night against Inter Miami, he was poor, and there's no excuses for that. And look, there's no need to beat Matt Freese down for that because he knows that he should have saved that. And credit to Jim Curtin for saying in his press conference, there's nobody to blame. It's on all of us, not one player. It's on the coaching staff. It's on the players. And that's what you want to hear your coaches say. You want your coaches to take the blame. You don't want your coaches throwing the players under the bus like we've seen Jose Mourinho do so many times at Manchester United, at Spurs, at Chelsea, at Real Madrid. So I always appreciate a coach that can take the blame and not throw players under the bus. It was the right thing to do for Jim Curtin not to say, Matt Freese was poor. Mbaizo was poor on both of these goals. On this goal, sorry, not these goals. But it's got to be better from Mbaizo, his awareness when Jack Elliott, Glesnes steps, when the Union are man-marking a superstar on the team like we saw against Nani and in Orlando City. Mbaizo was distracted by him. By Higuain, Mbaizo was distracted by him. I guess the good is he's aware of where the superstar is on the field at all times, just he's not aware of the player that's making the run in behind him or the player that's running literally right next to him, splitting him and Jack Elliott. So hopefully that can get worked out in training for Mbaizo. Still, I think Mbaizo's had a great season, but those two plays against Orlando and now into Miami, a little bit concerning. Offensively, like I said, great. Defensively, it's a little bit scary these last two games. Hopefully he fixes that against Chicago Fire. But like I said, maybe I'll change your mind. Maybe I won't with some of these stats. So I compare the 2020 to the 2021 season, where if you look at the Union's first 16 games, not including the MLS back games when the Union advanced farther in that tournament, but the first 3 games in MLS is back that counted towards MLS standings. Yes, I did include those stats. So I think it is interesting when you compare the 2020 stats to the 2021 stats. The first 9 out of the 16 games played for the Union in 2020 and 2021 all came on the road. Now, I did not expect that the Union would play the same amount of games in back-to-back seasons and this point in the season on the road. I was like, okay, this is interesting. So if you look at the 2020 season, those 9 games out of 16 that were played on the road, the Union had 3 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws. That's good for 12 points. And then if you look at the 9 games on the road so far this season for the Union, just comparing MLS stats here, people, not CONCACAF. In 2021, the Union have 2 wins, 2 losses, 5 draws, which is good for 11 points. And then if you really want to look at the problem for the Union, I don't think they're as bad as people think on the road. I mean, look, I'm surprised that the Union only have 2 losses this season on the road, where you look last season, they had 3 losses. The Union easily could have lost 4 out of those 5 draws. Now, if you want to say 3 out of the 5 because of the Chicago game where the Union blew the lead, yeah, I'd accept 3 out of 5. But I think 4 out of 5 draws on the road, the Union, they found a way to fight back and get a point. And this thing could look a whole lot different if they didn't find a way to get a draw against Atlanta United, where they scored, 2 goals in the last 7-8 minutes of the game. Everybody, I'm sure you guys at home, look, even me in the stadium, like, great. Came all the way down here to Atlanta to watch the Union lose to Atlanta United, not even get a goal. And to get 2 goals in the last 7-8 minutes, outstanding. To see them give up an early own goal against Chicago Fire, to find a way to crawl back and then take the lead before halftime, and then they blow the lead and they leave it late again, but they find a way to get an equalizer with Kacper Przyblko. It's a big performance right there. Played a man down for 45 minutes against the New York Red Bulls. And again, they left it late, found a goal to tie this game up. And what I really should have done is look at what are the latest goals that the Union have scored this season and how many times they've done that. I know they've scored at least four in the 80th minute or later in the game. That's really, really promising. Actually 5 because you add Inter Miami. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty promising right there. 5 goals in the 80th minute or later in the game. Just shows you that this team's just never out of it. They always find a way to grind the result. And I know people don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that at all, where, yes, like I said earlier, the Union probably should have beat Miami, but on the night, a draw is probably the right result. And look, it's been 4 games since Andre Blake, Alvis Powell, and Corey Burke have not been with the team. They've been away on international duty, as we know. And that has given us no depth at all, and especially at the striker position, where and in this time, we've only had 2 strikers. Only 2 strikers up top, with Sergio and Kacper Przyblko. And Jim, I know, has played Daniel Gazdag up top, where I think the clip I'm going to say, Jim talks about that situation there. So I don't want to spoil the clip for you guys. But look, to see this team grind with no depth, I think that's pretty promising. And look, 5 out of 12 points doesn't sound good. It doesn't look good on paper. Anywhere you put it, the depth in those 4 games with Alvis Powell, Andre Blake, and Corey Burke being there, yeah, it's not good. There's 4 games that those guys haven't been here. 5 points out of 12 points. Doesn't sound good. No, it doesn't. Just looking at it on my computer, doesn't look pretty. Saying it, looking at it, it doesn't change it at all. But it does show the resilience of this team, that they're not down until the final whistle. And if you want to look, since the Union came back from the break in their last 8 games, they've picked up 10 points out of 18. 6 out of 8 of those games have been played on the road in that stretch. It's brutal to play that many games on the road. It's extremely brutal. And I know people don't like that. I know they don't like it. I know people think that it sounds like an excuse, but I've got to imagine, I didn't look this up and I probably should have looked at it too. Since MLS has come back in June, in those 8 games, has there been any teams out there that have played more road games than the Union in that 8-game stretch? Look, you guys listening right now, go ahead, look that up. I'm not sure, but either way you look at it, it's tough for the Union to be away from home, where, like I said, look, 2 wins, 2 losses, 5 draws. Good for 11 points so far on the road. It's pretty good to only have 2 losses on the road. You're playing 500 ball on the road. That's great. We'll take that. But people panic. People are panicking, and I'm not there yet. People are going to complain that it's a missed opportunity for the Union. When teams drop points, the Union did nothing to close the gap from first to fourth. They just continue to drop down the standings. And yes, they sit in fourth right now, and they could drop even farther because some teams like Columbus, they've only played 15 games. If they win, that moves them all the way up to second, which is crazy. But Nashville, they've only played 15 games as well. And by the way, I don't know if you guys realize this, Nashville, 1 loss on the whole season. 1 loss on the whole season. That's the best in MLS. No team has lost that little of games. Seattle's next with 2. But to lose 1 game, that's really, really impressive from this Nashville side who have been so great defensively this season. Only conceded 14 goals, which is the second fewest in MLS in the Eastern Conference this season. Columbus, great defensively as well. They've given up only 12 goals this season. But Nashville, 6 wins, 8 draws, 1 loss. They've been playing great. And so look, a lot of teams can go ahead and bypass the Union. New York City, they've played 14 games, and they've been on a roll lately, and I'll probably bring them up a little bit later. But look, I don't think it's time to panic. Yes, things are extremely tight right now here in the East. But again, not making excuses. 6 out of 8 on the road. That's hard. It's hard for any team. And I was going to say earlier, I skipped over it. So I gave you the stats for the road in 2020 and 2021. And now if you go ahead and compare what they did in the first 16 games at home, where they played 7 games at home. And I know, look, the Union's quote-unquote home games were down in MLS's back. They played 2 home games down in Orlando. But the Union had 6 wins, 0 losses, 1 draw, which is good for 19 points at home in 2020 through 16 games. Right now in 2021, 4 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, which is good for 13 points. And then you go ahead and compare the points total. 31 points through 16 games last season for the Union, 24 points in 2021 so far in 16 games. It's a pretty big difference. But the biggest difference is the Union aren't playing great at home. 2 losses, especially that loss against Inter Miami, that's huge. The Union should have never lost 2-1 against Inter Miami. New York City, they lost to. Okay, I can accept that because we don't play great against New York City. But we've been better on the road compared to home, in my opinion. Now, look, the Union have 4 wins at home compared to 2 wins on the road in 2021. But the Union could have lost so many more games on the road. And like I said, they've found ways to go ahead and get points late. 5 goals I can count on the top of my head that are scored in the 80th minute or later. That's impressive. And I don't know if that stat changes any of your mind. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe some of you guys feel a little bit better hearing those stats. Me, when I looked at it, yeah, I feel a little bit better. I'm not panicking. I'm still not panicking. But these next 5 games, they are crucial for the Union. Now, I know I said that last episode, counting the Inter Miami game, saying, yeah, these next 5 games, these are crucial. Which, yeah, it was a crucial game. The Union should have won. Not going to beat that any more than what's already been beat to death on Twitter. But 4 out of these next 5 games coming up are at home. The Union are set to take on Chicago August 1st, Toronto August 4th, at New England August 8th, New York City comes to town August 18th, Montreal August 21st, and then obviously Club America is going to be played August 12th down in Mexico, which isn't an MLS game. But look, 4 out of 5 games in these next 5 games are at home. Now, I know I said when I was including the Inter Miami game, I said it had to be a minimum of 10 out of 15 points. Now, let's just cross off the Inter Miami game. What had happened has happened. 4 games out of 5 at home. It's a must. The Union must take 11 out of 15 points, in my opinion, during this stretch. That means no losses in these stretch of 5 games, not including the Club America game. Just talking MLS. If the Union lose 2 games at home, then yes, I do think it's time to panic. Because the Union can be a great road team, but if they can't win games at home, if they struggle at home where they keep losing games, or if they start drawing games at home, then yes, it is time to panic if that happens in these stretch of games. They always played New England tough, but like I said, the team that I'm most nervous about, most afraid about, is NYCFC. I said it, we don't play good against NYCFC, but the Union have to find a way to get a draw against NYCFC. They always play New England tough. They went in already this season and played New England at home, at our house, and we got a draw. Look, we went into New England last season. We got to win in New England. Can it happen? I think it can. New England's playing the best soccer here in the Eastern Conference. Jim Curtin said in his press conferences that, in his opinion, New England is the best team in the Eastern Conference. And look, the record shows it, that they are the best team. But the Union, they have to find a way to go into New England and get at least a draw, and definitely at least a draw against New York City at home. They cannot lose to New York City at home again. They cannot lose again at home against New York City. They have to find a way to stop Maxi Morales. And look, I'm sure when the time comes to preview that game, I'll be saying the same thing. You got to stop Maxi Morales. You got to look for the pace of the wingers. And that game is on August 18th. Injuries can happen. A lot of things can happen. But that game in these stretch of 5 games is the one I'm most nervous about, the New York City game. Especially when you look and you see New York City absolutely destroyed Orlando City 5-0, and they're not even at full strength yet. They still have players coming back from injury. They have players that are away on international duty. It's a New York City team. Don't sleep on them. I know a lot of people have been sleeping on them, but they are starting to get good in MLS, and they're not even at full strength yet. Just saying. And by the way, if you go ahead and look, 20 goals scored, 16 goals against for the Union. In these stretch of 5 games, the goal differential in this next 5 games, they've got to up it. Only +4. You've got to up it, Union. They've got to score multiple goals against some of these teams. They've got to keep clean sheets, which they've done a good job of this season so far. I believe 8 clean sheets on the year. They've got to start this Sunday against Chicago. Beat them 2-0, 3-0. 3-0 might be asking for a lot, but 2-0 potentially, and hopefully I can get Tyler Terrens on the podcast to preview that Chicago game, and from now to then, maybe my opinion changes. Maybe I'll say a draw or something. I don't know, but we won't talk too much about Chicago. I'll save that for the preview. Got to score goals. Got to score goals. Now look, and Jim, I do think this Inter Miami game, going back to it, I think Jim deserves some of the blame. Jim was never going to rotate a ton of the team, but the main player that he needed to rest for this game was Bedoya. You don't want to do that. That's fine. That's fine. But at least bring Quinn Sullivan in a lot earlier than what you did. Because what did we see? We saw Quinn Sullivan, again, as soon as he comes off the bench, looked like he wanted to make something happen. And so I'm going to go ahead and play Jim's thoughts on rotating the squad, how it's been difficult only having 2 strikers, and just all that jazz. So here's what Jim Curtin had to say.
We had to rotate and maybe play guys out of position over the last stretch. Again, we're missing some key guys. Obviously, Andre and Corey and Alvis are missed right now for some of the depth that they give us. Some of their qualities aren't really replaceable. However, we still learned a lot about our group during this time. I thought Daniel still put in a really good shift as a second striker. Is it his ideal position? No, but based on the matchups, based on the fresh legs that we had, we thought this was the best way. If we start Sergio there and maybe he runs out of gas at 60, then we're in a big trouble where we don't have any true strikers to bring in to change the game if we're winning or down a goal. So overall, we managed it as best we could. We got a point tonight. We wanted 3, but obviously we came up a little bit short. Look, the Orlando team that beats us is a good team. It was a tough game. This was a game where, a bit of a trap game where you're playing against an opponent that has their back against the wall that just lost 5-0, and they came out and put everything into the game. So they made it hard on us. We knew it was going to be difficult on the short rest, but we gutted it out till the end and got a point, and now we very much look forward to getting back to Philadelphia.
So it was interesting hearing his thoughts on why he started Gazdag up top instead of Sergio, thinking that Sergio could probably only go 60 minutes this game against Inter Miami, probably because of the heat. But Bedoya is the player that should have came out earlier. And look, Jim's going to stick with his captain, and we can all complain so much on Twitter. But let's not forget just how much Ali Bedoya has meant to this team since he came to Philadelphia. This guy has left his heart and soul on the field every single time he steps up onto the pitch. Natural leader. Who else has the leading qualities that Ali Bedoya has? Not many people, right? And yes, he was gassed, and I thought Jose Martinez played a great ball. I forget what minute it was in the game to Ali Bedoya, and if Ali wasn't so gassed, I thought he would have got to the ball, but yeah, I mean, he was tired, and I really would have wanted to see Quinn Sullivan come onto the field a lot earlier than when Jim brought him on, but it didn't happen, and I don't know what more Jim could have done to rotate the squad. I don't think he really needed to rotate a whole bunch of players. It's just Bedoya, in my opinion, that need to come off sooner, and it didn't happen. And at least we know that, look, Quinn Sullivan, he continues to give this team a spark off the bench. He got an assist. We've seen him get a goal already this season against Chicago. Quinn Sullivan he always wants the ball. He always wants to drive towards defenders, and he wants to make something happen. And we saw it against Orlando, just in the right place in the right time, where he could have scored a hat trick, right? But just unlucky not to get a goal at all. I'm happy we have a player that's so young like Quinn Sullivan that's not afraid to play against some guys double his age, that's not afraid to take defenders on 1v1. It's no wonder why Dortmund have been scouting this guy for some time. And look, Quinn continues to play the way that he's playing. He continues to make a difference. He's not going to be here for too much longer, in my opinion. But it's good to know that we have a young player that can make a difference coming off the bench. Not one other thing, but a couple other points I want to bring up for some more positivity is Kacper has 3 goals in his last 3 games. It looks like Kacper is potentially getting hot. Again, like I was talking about Quinn Sullivan being in the right place at the right time against Orlando City, Kacper's been in the right place in the right time in the last 3 games to get 3 goals. And people have been, look, a lot of people give Kacper slack, and he's not going to set the world on fire, but I do think he is a good MLS scorer. Now, when I say set the world on fire, I don't think he's going to be like a Joseph Martinez, a Carlos Vela, those kind of guys and everything, but he's definitely good for 15 goals in a season, in my opinion. Yeah, what happened last year happened with Kacper, but 3 goals in his last 3 games played. It seems like Kacper is getting hot. Hopefully he can continue that consistency where he continues to put the ball in the back of the net, because we all know our strikers are so inconsistent, and when one of them are hot, it's good. We'll ride it for a little bit, then they get cold, and then hopefully another striker gets hot and we'll ride them. But right now it seems like Kacper is the guy in form, and hopefully he can continue to score, and hopefully we see him score a goal or 2 against Chicago on Sunday. Elsinho, it was great to see him back in action. He looked good. It was awesome seeing him take on Breck Shea, dribbling by Breck Shea, where Breck was like, all right, not going to catch up to you. You got me, and there's nothing else to it. It was interesting, too. I know Jim said in his press conference that they went to a 3-5-2 or their makeshift of a 3-5-2 formation. At times, though, El Senior had to play as a right back when Miami were coming to attack. So, yeah, El Senior was getting a throwback to his Shakhtar days where he came up as a right back. So it was good to see El Senior back on the field, get involved, looked healthy, and hopefully he gets more and more fit where he doesn't just play 10 minutes, and hopefully he starts some more things off for this team. I think he does, and it's just all about managing him and not tiring him out, just like what we need to be doing with Bedoya. Leon Flock, he had 2 more successful tackles, which puts him first in the league in tackles with 31. Leon's also second in the league in pressures with 373. And it is good to find a player that is making up for Brendan Aronson. Brendan Aronson was good with those pressures last season for the Union. Jameer Montero is starting to get up there now. I think he was in 5th when I checked. He might not always get the ball back with those pressures, but it is good to see Leon Flock has such a good engine on him where from whenever he starts to whenever he comes off, he's always just trying to press whoever has the ball to force a turnover for the Union. And maybe that's another thing too, where we see at times the Union have been giving up too many goals the last couple games where maybe guys are pressing a little bit too hard, which means that now the team's out of formation. They're out of shape because somebody pressed the ball and they completely whiffed on it. And now somebody else has to step up to the ball and make up for that missed tackle. But Leon, it is good to see that he has a great engine on him. And offensively, yeah, it's a little bit struggling. He's struggling a little bit, but defensively, he's been one of the best defensive players in the midfield out of all MLS players, in my opinion. And Jack Elliott, he extends his lead in clearances with 3 more against Miami, which puts him at 112. Did not know Jack Elliott was leading MLS in clearances. But look, Jack Elliott just continues to be at the right place in the right time. And it's good to have a good center back like Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes. But guys, I want to go ahead and go into Blunder of the Week. Like I said, this has to do with Atlanta United and the Columbus Crew. So Kanye West was in town to promote his new album. Had a listening party at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And then pictures start to surface that Kanye was at the game against the Columbus Crew. But then more reports came out that said, yeah, not only was Kanye at the game, he's living in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And Kanye West is getting my Blunder of the Week because, and maybe Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Atlanta United should get it as well. So, yeah, all 3 of those guys get my Blunder of the Week because Kanye West is living in the away team's dressing room, in their locker room. So that meant that the Columbus Crew had to go to a different locker room in the stadium, which apparently Atlanta United have a ton of. But, yeah, that's kind of ridiculous that Kanye West had his listening party, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to stay here in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I'm going to stay in the away team's locker room, and I'm not getting out. So you've got to go ahead and find another locker room, Columbus. And so I think it serves Atlanta United right to lose this game against Columbus because who knows how long Kanye West is going to be living in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But guys, didn't have a lot to say about MLS news. Hopefully I changed your mind about how the Union have played here in the last 8 games. Maybe I didn't. But the only thing I know is against Chicago, the Union need to get 3 points. They need to get 11 out of 15 points in these next 5 games. Hopefully they do. Hopefully. I trust this team still. I trust Jim Curtin. I hope nobody's saying Jim Curtin out on Sunday. I really hope nobody's saying that because it is way too early to panic with this team. Like I said, if the Union lose 2 games at home in this stretch of 5, you can panic all you guys want. I'm here for it if they lose 2 games. I don't know what I'm going to do if they lose 2 games at home. I'm sure it's going to be an angry podcast, sad podcast, but let's try to stay positive. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on social media, follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at FreeKickPod. go ahead and check out the website, thefreekickpodcast.com. Wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick. And like I said earlier, hopefully I can get Tyler Terrence back onto the podcast to preview this Sunday's Chicago Fire versus Philadelphia Union game. Guys, don't sleep on Chicago. I'm going to have a lot to say about Chicago because they had a great game against Toronto even though they lost. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is The Free Kick Podcast.